Thank you.
Should I repeat that last part? Just really quickly. Wait, Liz, I think you're on mute.
If you want to give the little intro again, that'd probably be good.
Okay, we're gonna go through this one more time. Okay, my bad. Okay, so, all right. Okay, so this is, welcome to the Sweet ASU event. This is the interview follow-up. Basically, what we're gonna be doing today is going over a couple of follow-up strategies after interviews and basically any general tips before and during, but mostly this is for the follow-ups after because it is times of COVID, so it is made a little harder to reach out to a lot of different recruiters and stuff like that. So I did have a couple of slides. Again, like my email got jacked up, but now I can't find those slides from the Career Center, but I will get those sent out later on today. Afterwards, so they have like all the tips, so don't worry, you don't have to memorize this as I talk super fast. So we can get started. Basically, there's two types of interviews you can jump into. One interview is cold turkey, as I'd like to call it. Basically, this interview means that you haven't met the recruiter, you don't have any connections with the company, and this is you that you just apply to this job online. Basically, this type of interviews, you have like no real connection quite yet established, but you know, you did a great job. Let's just say you did a great job on the interview. Immediately make sure to take notes about your experience about the interview afterwards. Take some time to assess what were the positives, what were the negatives of this interview. Just like really review and understand like what you got, what experience you gained, and what you learned, and what you can use for next time. Also, something that was really important that I didn't know last year, but is really key is like sending them a thank you. It's not like you don't want to like kiss up to your employers, but you want to send them a thank you for giving them, like sparing their time to interview you and give you a proper assessment and opportunity for you to interview for this job. So a thank you letter or email makes a great impact on not only showcasing your personality, but allowing you to really like establish that connection and make sure they have a good taste in their mouth after, you know, the interview and everything. So after that, if let's say you have a couple of interviews in a series, because that does happen ever so often, for the second interview, again, make sure you remember what the things you need to improve on or the positive or negatives of the last interview, and use it in your next interview. Just make sure you know how to negotiate the job offer. Do not be afraid to do that. We had a lot of great meetings last year about what it meant to have a job negotiation, from pay to like hours to experience, things like that. So you should never be afraid to negotiate anything and anything you feel comfortable with. So that shows great initiative, and it shows like character. You're very proactive in knowing what you want and how you're going to get it. So yes, those are some of the follow-up interview tips that I have. Unfortunately, I had like a whole slide, but like those are like some of the basic things. I would like to open up this time to see if anyone else had some interview strategies or tips, if they like from their past interviews or this year or anything. So yeah.
I can add something. So normally when you're getting an interview, you'll speak to normally at a career fair, you'll talk to somebody. They may or may not be like an employee, or they might be on more of like the HR recruitment side of things. So first of all, figure out like who you're talking to and what role they serve. And then once you get into contact with the your recruiter who's going to be scheduling those interviews with you, you can ask them a ton of questions up front. So you can ask them about the pay. You can ask them about what location you'll be interviewing for. That kind of thing, and you don't ever have to worry about that information getting into about that. You can talk to them about it, and so you can also ask them, and be sure to ask them if it's a behavioral interview that you're going to be doing on your follow-up, or if it's a technical interview. So for anyone who doesn't know, those are normally like the two kinds of interviews. So behavioral is more about like, hey, Salma, tell me about a time that like you experienced a struggle, or tell me about who you are and what you do at school. Whereas a technical one would be sometimes as far as like, hey, for electricals, that's what I'm in. Hey, there's the circuit, what does it do? And so there's a variety of different levels within there, but definitely be sure to ask so you know if you need to study beforehand. And that's been like the biggest tip for me and helps you go in really mentally prepared.
So I don't have any tips. I'm looking for advice. Like when the interviewer asks if you have any questions for them, this is where I get stuck and I'm like, nothing that I can think of right now. Do you guys have any tips on that?
Always have a list. I had at least 5 at all times for the questions I want to ask them. And then depending on how passionate you are about Courtney, like how hard is it to write the questions, maybe that's an indicator of how interested you actually are in the job. But just like it could be like cultural questions like, hey, what's your favorite part about working there? Or if it's like a manager and engineer, be like, hey, what's a project that challenged you? What's a project that was meaningful to you? Ask them about what softwares you're using. If you're using like electrical engineers will use very different software than a civil engineer will need. And you can say like, that's a nice point to, hey, I'm familiar with this. Do you use it? Let's see. But yeah, culture, stalk them on LinkedIn shamelessly. Ask them how long, like you should already know how long they've been at the company. Find out, did they just get hired? What's been the experience like? Have they worked there for 10 years? Why do you stay? That's a nice one. Basically, like it'll be easy, but like I always do it beforehand. Definitely not on the spot. No, that's terrifying. But have a list ready for you. That's kind of the advantage of having these remote interviews now. You have time to prepare.
Yeah, thanks. That helps me a lot. Thank you.
Also, shout out to TikTok for where I got this one. Not gonna lie, not gonna take credit for it, but I definitely saw this on TikTok. And she said that a really good question to ask is, tell me about one of your most successful interns, if you're interning for an intern position, or like one of your most successful employees. Because then if you get the job, you know what they're looking for. And you can also look and say like, if the employer comes back and they're like, oh, like this person came in and he was always willing to work extra hours and like always was there and available for like tasking, then you might be able to know, okay, well, this person might expect me not to work that minimum hours. Is that something I'm interested in? Is it not something I'm interested? Or like some employers will be like, I really want to know like who you are and like what you bring to the table because the skills we can teach you. So it like helps you get a better idea of what the expectation of the internship is beyond just like paper level. And that's totally right. You're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And so something else that I always like to ask, since obviously diversity and inclusion in engineering is important to me, is what does your company do and what does your team do to support inclusion in the workforce and some of those, because that's a really good way to gauge their culture. So by trying to get them to have those like open-ended questions that they can then tell you stories back has been super, super helpful for me too.
Yeah, that's a good idea with the open-ended questions.
There's also general questions you can ask about like what to expect or what they want to see from their employees too. So that way you set the precedent that you're always looking to be the overachiever, to like showcase everything that you have and what you're going to bring to the table, as well as like you understand what they want to see as well. So yes. Is there any more questions?
When do you guys think is like timing wise appropriate to follow up? And this is why I'm like I want to be polite, but I don't want to be a stalker. Be like, hey, the next day, do you email them? Is it the next 2 days? Is it the next week? I never know what to do, so I'd appreciate advice on that.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering about that one too, because like I had a recruiter tell me she was directly going to send my resume into the company, and then it's like been like about a week and a half already, and I haven't heard anything.
My dad does hiring, and I've asked him about it, and he said that, I mean, I don't know if it's just his personality, but he likes people that show that they're interested in the job. So if they don't call back, then he's like, okay, they're not interested, so I'm going to pass on them. But it could just be his personality. I don't know how other people work.
Yeah, and I've heard at least from what I remember when I went over the slides, it's you want it to be as fresh as possible so that they remember you, and you can like say, hey, like I interviewed like the day before, or I interviewed like 2 days at most, so that, because like a lot happens within 2 days. We have to be mindful of like how busy their lives are as well. But yeah, you want to make sure it's as fresh as possible. Send them the thank you. It's just polite manners. You don't have to think it's a stalkerish type thing unless you send them repeated emails, then we have issues. But yeah, you want it to be as fresh as possible, and because yeah, it shows interest, and it shows that that you like not only want to follow up, you want to know what happened, but you also want to thank them for everything that they have. So, yeah.
In the when Elevate came to talk about interviewing process, she had mentioned that like non-thank you follow-ups should probably exist between a week and 2 weeks after. So like at that sometime between that 7-day and that 14-day mark is when you should follow up, if it's a strict like follow-up to check in. But I don't think anyone ever directly asked her about thank yous. I, on principle, try to send thank yous out like the same day or the next day, or like send it in my LinkedIn request.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Someone tell me once to send it the day before so they get it like right after your interview.
I was gonna say too, like it depends on like I've had some recruiters ask me to follow up, and so they'll be like, hey, why don't we follow up about this on Monday? And then if I don't hear from them, I'll follow up. So I think Lily's point is like super important if it's like a thank you versus like you're asking something from them, to kind of take that into consideration and try and gauge it. And it's also something, again, that's a question you can kind of ask the recruiter and ask them what their like expected timeline for their interview process is. And that way, you know, like for Claire's example, if it's normal for it to be like a week and a half without hearing anything, or if that's kind of a red flag. So that's another thing I really like to ask the recruiter is like, what's your general timeline on your interview process? And that's something they should be able to share with you. And it's very company specific too, which makes it difficult to kind of generalize the when to follow up question.
Hopefully we answered that one. I think we did pretty well. Is there any other questions?
Do we have any follow-up interviews that we can celebrate? People are here. Yeah?
I asked because I had multiple interviews, but I accepted a job this morning. So I'm just like being polite, like, oh, thank you for interviewing me, but I got a job.
Oh my gosh, so excited for you. Congratulations. Who are you going to be working with?
Structural technologies, and then it's going to be a special site at the Palo Verde generating power station. So they're fixing concrete there, which is my
That's
special.
so exciting. Is that internship full-time?
Full-time.
Full-time. Well, that's a big decision. How do you feel?
I feel good. It helped. I had a bunch of other interviews scheduled because like I could talk, be like, oh, I have this job offer, but is this really what I want to do? So I had that chance to consider all the other companies, but I'm so excited. But yeah, doctor and job. I just wanted to thank you guys for your support. You guys are awesome. And just first people I want to tell. Thank you.
So exciting. Congratulations, babe.
You're killing it, Emily.
And you're a research finalist. Come on, girl.
Ooh, yeah, y'all forgot about that. Come on.
Okay, I see a question in the chat about like how long you have to decide for accepting a job offer. Emily, do you want to take that?
I asked, and like Liz said, this one's actually very company specific too. I've talked to other people. They say it's usually 2 weeks. If you're in the construction industry, it might be really quick. Like I've heard nightmares from my project manager friends, that's a day or two. Mine was a week. So, but that's because the project's starting pretty soon. They wanted, again, a sooner thing. If it's more laid back, like if you're graduating in May, obviously they may not need it for another week or two. So my internship was a 2-week ask. Like you have 2 weeks to apply. My job was a week. But again, industry specific, company specific. I totally feel free to ask that. So my manager, the hiring manager called me. He goes, hi, I just want to give you good news. Before the weekend was out, you have the job. I'm getting you the paperwork. And I'm just like, oh, wow, that's awesome. could you tell me a timeline about when it's due? And also on the paperwork, it said when it was due. So there should be no question about when it's due for you.
Sometimes with internships, there's flexibility too. You can ask for a little bit of an extension. They may not always be able to provide that, but if you have multiple offers and you're like in the interview process for two, sometimes you can get an extension. I know I just got an extension on one of mine. So it's possible, just sometimes tricky, but it's not the worst they can say is no. And then, but like, it's not a bad thing to ask by any means.
Yeah, in regards to the like construction companies thing that you were saying, Emily, my brother actually works for Kiwa, and I think he had like maybe a day or two to accept an offer. I think he's working as like a field engineer or something now. So cool job, but yeah, he's like all the way in Louisiana right now.
Is there a cap on how many internships to apply for? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Apply for as many as you can apply to that you're interested in. That's the only cap that I would add is like, don't apply to an internship just to have an internship unless you like really need the money or there's like an extenuating circumstance, but try and look through. There's so many companies within engineering that you can probably find something you're really interested in. So definitely take the time to do some research on the companies and honestly just apply to any that kind of sound interesting and ask around. I know like within our SWE family and like our general body here, there's so many people that have interned at so many different places. So if you have questions about a specific one, just ping it in general and be like, hey, has anybody interned, blah, blah, blah. And there's chances are that somebody might have, and like they can share their experience.
There's just one thing I want to say, which is that people that end up graduating and don't graduate with a job ready, job hunting becomes a full-time job. It takes a lot of time and a lot of emotional energy. So this feeds into Liz's point of like, please don't apply somewhere that you're not interested in unless you're like, I need this money really, really bad. Just because it's going to take time and energy away from your studies. So just keep that in mind. It is a really exhausting process.
And the interviewing process might be multiple long. And so like, I know a lot of places now have stages of interviews. So you have to account for the application and the interview time. And interviews are just, at least for me, kind of stressful. So if you're going to put the stress in, you might want it to be worth it, you know? But again, this is all just totally my opinion and, you know, take it with a grain of salt. We're all just sharing our experiences before. Does anyone maybe have an answer to the, if you get a better offer after you've already accepted another one question? I'll just start by saying sometimes, and be sure you read your paperwork thoroughly before you do accept for full-time offers. Sometimes you literally cannot back out. Like you're signing a contract. So just keep that in mind for full-time positions, that there is that catch. Sometimes it's a little bit more flexible for internships, but it's frowned upon to accept and then like say, I'm sorry, I can't, and go to somewhere else.
And just to confirm, there's a verbal acceptance and then there is an actual, yeah, right? Okay, I thought that worked the same way for most of them. So, yes. Just want to clarify that. I think it's easier to back out if you verbally accepted, but it's just not good manners, right? Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
I've heard this from someone, I think it was either a recruiter or someone working in a full-time position, where it's like, it is definitely frowned upon to go back on your offer. But like that being said, especially for like a full-time job, if you get offered a job at your like absolute dream company where you were like, this is it for me, like this is where I want to be for the rest of my life, then, and you think you won't be happy at the job that you just accepted, then it is reasonable to be at least honest with the company you've accepted with, see what you can work out, let them know the situation, and just kind of communicate from there.
I think Cassidy brings up a good point too about like just transparency, especially with your recruiter. That's what they're hoping, because then in that transparency, they can like give you a little bit more wiggle room. So if you're saying like, oh, like a big contributing factor for me is salary or location, and you're able to communicate that with your recruiter, they're able to have like a little bit more flexibility and like put in more effort to try and get you to the company. So I always like to be super upfront with everybody that I'm talking to, and kind of, it's honestly kind of a negotiation benefit too, because then if you have another offer or you have another location that you're really preferenced with, you can say like, I really enjoy XYZ and about your company, but these are some of the hesitations that I have, and they might be able to work with you there.
Okay, so sorry. I've been taking notes during this meeting, so hopefully we can. I mean, I know this is a pre-recording, anyways, but again, I'll send out the presentation once I find it from the Career Center. If not, I'll just ask them again. But is there any more questions? I feel like the open forum idea, but this is yeah. So let's see. Good.
Just a little plug too, and like a little pep talk for anybody going through interviews. You are totally worth asking for what you want. You are totally worth negotiating about your salary. You're totally worth, you know, getting what you actually want out of it. So if you're afraid for any reason to say that you have a hesitation with the company, don't be. You have the skill sets. You've done the work. ASU has an incredible engineering program. So take confidence in that when you're going in. And honestly, confidence is one of the best things that you can bring, because it shows excitement and it shows the employer that you're interested. So never ever doubt it. Never ever be afraid to ask those bold questions. It's not frowned upon as long as you phrase it correctly. And you know, if you ever need hype from somebody, reach out to the exec council or any of the leadership. We're here to hype you up if you get nervous before an interview. So if you have any questions and you think of them later, let Salma know. She can help answer them. Let anybody else know she can help answer them. But don't be nervous. You guys can do it.
Yes, like Claire from last, oh my God, she hyped me before the Career Center at Career Fair. And I literally went up and had this amazing conversation with On Semiconductors. And it was so awesome. Like I made a great connection. And like, I was so nervous before. I didn't even think like I would even be able to carry a conversation about silicon wafers, but apparently I did. So like, just showing them that you're passionate about whatever you're in and like what you want to do with that job, like, is a great way to like not only build connections but make an impact. Like that's the whole point of an interview. Like you want to make an impact, you want to be rememberable and like in that interview. So, and it's a great confidence booster. Like yes, like Alyssa's right, if you need hype, we can hype you.
Yeah,
So,
the other thing that at least like the recruiters I've talked to so far have really appreciated is that I'm very involved in the clubs that I'm in. So like put SWE on your resume. Like if you are keeping up with like meetings like here and there, like put that on there and say like what you've accomplished by like being in this club. People like seeing that you have like the networking and the communication skills, because that goes so far, right? I mean, you know, the stereotype of like engineers not being able to talk. That's not the case for a lot of us in SWE. I feel like a lot of us are not afraid to, you know, like speak up and talk to other people and things like that. The other thing that I had heard really recently is that this is for an internship that has basically like a super day where there's like 4 interviews in a row and they're all like somewhat technical, is that if you're getting into like technical stuff and you don't really know what you're talking about and you're just making stuff up, that does not look good. It's better just to like be honest and like, yes, like go ahead and speak to like how much you know, but at some point if like the hiring manager or whoever's interviewing you is like asking you a question, it's okay to say you don't know, like especially, you know, if you're someone who's like a sophomore like I am and like just hasn't had a lot of the big engineering classes yet. But they will probe you for what you know, so just be wary of that.
A quote from the Microsoft session a couple weeks ago said that they're looking for people that can be learn-it-alls, not know-it-alls. And I feel like that's really stuck with me. So something to kind of keep in mind on your interviews.
I forgot that, and that actually makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah, I literally, it's been like my life motto, my like life quote recently is to be like a learn-it-all, not a know-it-all. I said it in my interview too, and they were all like, oh, I like that. And I was like, definitely stole that from Microsoft. Thanks, Microsoft.
That's great.
As the meeting's kind of coming to a slower point, just a friendly reminder to sign in. I'm not seeing the same number of attendees as I am on the sign-in sheet. So a reminder to my directors that might be on as well that might have forgot to sign in, or anyone else, just so we can get you those active number points. Salma, any closing remarks at all?
Huh?
Anything to close us out?
Oh, yes. Okay, so thank you all for coming to the interview follow-up event. Again, with the slides, I'll have that sent out. And I hope you guys enjoyed and we had all your questions answered. I know I got a lot of great advice from you guys without even knowing it. I mean, talking to the Career Center and all is still very different from the actual interview experience, I will admit. But yes, I'm glad you guys all came out. And I hope you guys have a great night. Stay safe with the COVID situation and all, and just in general. Like, I hope you guys are just having a great time. So again, thank you so much for coming to the event. I hope you have a good day. If you want, you can stay and talk. I know I've got to run in a little bit. I've been really busy, but thank you so much. It's good. Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Liz. Do you have a couple minutes to stay on and like chat finance? Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Claire, will you stop the recording?
Oh.